Hello, it's John Heaton, and this afternoon I'm going to review this album from Bob Dylan, Under the Red Sky from 1991. I've been after this on vinyl for a while now, and I was happy to find it in that shop in Florence I was telling you about a few videos ago, Rock Bottom Records. And it wasn't too cheap, but I was happy to pick it up, to be honest, because I don't remember it coming out on vinyl, or I was into CDs at the time. This is a Dutch pressing with the original Hype sticker on it still. So just to put it in context, his previous album Oh Mercy had been widely regarded as a return to form and critically applauded, and had sold pretty well. And then either side of the Oh Mercy album, Bob had got involved with the Travelling Wilburys and released Volume 1 with that group in 88 and Volume 2 in 90. And then this album came out in, let me get the exact date for you. I think it was September 1990. To consult this 10th of September 1990, consulting the Ultimate Music Guide again, and I'll talk about that in a bit. This album was not that well received at the time by the fans or the critics, and which is a bit unfortunate, because I think I was listening to it again recently in the last week. I mean, it's not very good back cover, is it? Just show you the record quickly. It has the words, and which is not that common on a Dylan record. And then he was on CBS at the time, and yeah, I get some of the criticism. This album was a little bit I'm not sure what the word is, lackluster in places. A lot of famous names play on this album. That's the first thing to point out. So David Crosby appears on backing vocals on a couple of tracks. George Harrison slide guitar on the title track. Bruce Hornsby on piano, Elton John on piano, Al Cooper, the famous keyboard player from Like a Rolling Stone, features on a track called Handy Dandy, and maybe one other. And then Slash is featured on the opening track, and then Jimmy and Stevie Ray Vaughan are featured, and Don Was as well. And the album is produced by Don Was and David Weiss and Jack Frost, who was Dylan. And then Jack Frost would actually later on take on the production duties himself, but here he was relying on some help from others. Also featured on this album, interestingly to say, is Robin Ford, who was the guitarist who supported George Harrison on the Dark Horse tour of '74, and Waddy Wachtel on guitar, who played with loads of people, including Stevie Nicks. And then we got Kerry Aronoff on drums, Randy Jackson on bass, David Lindley on guitar, and a guy called Jamie Muho Barak on organ, I think it is. And then Bob's playing quite a bit of piano on this album. He's credited piano and vocal on 4 tracks, and then guitar and vocal on the rest. And then there's one track where he's credited with accordion and vocal. And actually I saw him on the tour, actually no, it was a good 10 years later when I saw him. I'm not sure if I saw him on a tour around this time, because he was touring, and I don't know, I can't remember if he was playing piano, but when I saw him last in 2002, he was definitely playing a lot of piano. But this album's 1990. So quite impressive lineup, and let me just show you the reviews of this album. So this one doesn't get a very strong review in here, I'm afraid to say. More or less everyone seems to have it in for the opening track, Wiggle Wiggle, because the lyrics are a little bit silly, and I'm not sure what Dylan was thinking writing a song like that, but you know, we're used to him writing all these deep lyrics, and he's coming up with lines like wiggle, 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 like a bowl of soup. But then, interestingly, in the same song, wiggle, 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 like a swarm of bees, like a big fat snake, and then like a ton of lead, which is quite interesting. But it's a strange choice for the opener. And actually, I have to say, the opener of Oh Mercy was a strange choice. Political World I didn't think was the strongest track to open that album. But it's not a terrible track musically. It's just lyrically it's a little bit embarrassing. But in this book, Clinton Heylin, he seems to make a habit of slagging off the output of Bob Dylan and saying the outtakes were much better, and the alternative album, had they used this version or that version, would have been 10 times better. But in this particular case, he's more or less defending this album against more or less all criticism, saying it flows well. And those who harp on about this or that weak track are not asking themselves, does the album flow? Does time slide away? If throughout the 80s Dylan was guilty of releasing collections of songs that lacked internal integrity, Empire Burlesque though the exception was chock full of clunkers, the songs on Under the Red Sky require their context. But interestingly, Clinton does not defend or otherwise wiggle. He doesn't even mention it in the text, or I couldn't find it anyway. So maybe I think more or less everyone accepts that it's the worst track on the album, probably. And this review gives it 1 star. So strange, and for that reason one doesn't pick up this. It's quite often the case, if an album has a weak opener, you don't reach for it off the shelf very often. Although these days you can do random select, or you can skip a track quite easily. So I suppose it's less true now than it was in the days of vinyl. And I don't think I even had this. I didn't have this on vinyl. I had Oh Mercy on. No, I hadn't. The last Dylan album I had on vinyl was, unless you count the Wilburys, was Down in the Groove, I think, from '87. So anyway, that was that. Then the title track comes next, and it's a nice tune, and George produces some lovely slide guitar. Unfortunately, George was not to release an album up until he died. When this album came out, one was still hoping for a new album of his, but all we got was the odd session he did on other people's work, including this one. Very nice to hear, and very distinctive guitar. Unbelievable. Perhaps this would have been a better opener for the album, because it rocks very nicely, and the band sound is good. I think it's got this also has not only the lyrics, but it tells you who plays on each track. So Al Cooper is on keyboards here, and then I mentioned Waddy Wachtel on guitar, and Bob's playing harp as well. And this is a decent track. I like it. And then we have Born in Time, which was an outtake which was originally recorded in the Oh Mercy sessions. And if you pick up this bootleg series, volume 8, this is the double edition, and it has the version from the Oh Mercy sessions of this song, which is very interesting to hear. And I guess it is a little bit better, but it's not head and shoulders or in a different league from this version. I quite like this version. Clinton Heylin is slagging off the vocal on here and saying that they recorded another 2 versions in these sessions, which was better, although nothing approaches the Oh Mercy version. But this is a good song, good lyrics, and more or less top-notch Bob as a song. And then TV Talking Song is a strange one. Musicians include Bruce Hornsby and Robin Ford on this one. He's down at Hyde Park watching the people. This is where the place in London where people stand on top of a wooden box and speak about the meaning of life or whatever they want to speak about. It's called Speaker's Corner. And I don't know if Bob actually went down there to check it out, but he certainly describes that in the verse, that he went down there, and some bizarre words. It's not a very memorable song though, and apparently the earlier versions of this were better, and they kind of overworked it and overdubbed too much, and by the time they finished it they'd lost the whatever spirit there was behind the original song. But as I say, not a great one. 10,000 Men, open side 2, with Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimmy Vaughan on guitar duties. And this is it's another strange track to open a side, but I quite like it. It's got a nice groove. The words are a little bit well, they're not Bob's best, should we say, particularly towards the end. 10,000 women all sweeping my room, 10,000 women all sweeping my room, spilling my buttermilk, sweeping it up with a broom. Ooh, baby, thank you for my tea. Baby, thank you for my tea. It's so sweet of you to be so nice to me. Okay, not Bob's best lyric. 2x2, which is the track Elton John features on, has another rumour, by the way, is that this album was dedicated to his child, the 4-year-old child, Desiree Gabrielle Dennis Dillon, the child he had with Carolyn Dennis, who is his wife in the mid-80s. I think she was one of the backing singers from the gospel years. So the sleeve says, I couldn't find it on the sleeve, dedicated to Gabby Goo Goo. Does it say that? Can't see it on the sleeve, but maybe it's on the insert somewhere. But this song, this kind of simple words for a child to understand, I suppose. One by one they followed the sun, one by one until there were none. 9 by 9 they drank the wine, 10 by 10 they drank it again. It's Bob, playful lyrics, but not anywhere near his best. This is not why he was given the Nobel Prize for Literature. God Knows is next, and this is a song which apparently they really struggled to record in the studio. And as a song, it's strange and maybe could have been better produced. It's a good, interesting words, although Lord knows what they're about. It starts off referring to someone. God knows you ain't pretty. God knows it's true. God knows there ain't nobody ever going to take the place of you. God knows there's a river. God knows how to make it flow. God knows you ain't going to be taking nothing with you when you go. Quite like this track. But my favourite track on the whole album, and this one really divides opinion, I know, is Handy Dandy. I think it's a glorious, fun-loving, amusing track. And I was just reading in here, because when you first hear the words, you think, what is this about? A fascinating character piece about a gentleman rogue that at first glance looks like Dylan Doggerel, but under scholarly analysis has been revealed to draw lines between sources from King Lear to Christ's Sermon on the Mount. Well, I'm not sure about that, but Handy Dandy, and maybe it's more autobiographical than anything else written about anyone in particular. But I just think I love the way Dylan phrases the words and has a lot of fun. And apparently this version of the song originally was 30 minutes in the studio and they cut it down. And Al Cooper's on great organ form. If every bone in his body was broken, he would never admit it. He has an all-girl orchestra, and when he says strike up the band, they hit it. I think it's great. And then I love the tune and I love the bridge. I think it's the best track on the album by quite a distance, really. Cats in the Well closes the album. Same musicians. Ray's Biggs on trumpet as well. It's not bad, but it's a bit workmanlike, and he did this in concert a lot. In fact, he finished the concert that I went to in 2002, the last one I attended. So this was a favourite of his for some reason, I don't know why. And in contrast to that, he's never done Handy Dandy in concert. And there was one track which also he's never done, and I can't remember which one it was. But Not the best closer to the album, but quite a spirited number, not bad. So this album is unjustly overlooked, and I would urge you to check it out, and at least 50% of it is decent, and it flows well together, it's not obnoxious, and he was to do far worse in his career than this one. So thank you for watching. See you next time.